Hi, and welcome everyone to the 113th episode of Serum Rocks. Today we have Lisa Crosbie from Barhead Solutions to talk about custom pages. But first, hello Heidi, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm wonderful. How are you?
Yeah, I've had a lovely Easter, so I'm really enjoying the time off. And before we continue with Lisa here, if someone wants to reach us and have a question for us, where can they reach us?
Oh, they can find us on all of the great social media platforms. You can follow us on LinkedIn or on Facebook. You can tweet with the hashtag of CRM Rocks, or you can check out our brand new YouTube channel, which has 11 subscribers.
Yeah, we're working on that. So let's introduce Lisa then. Lisa has a contagious enthusiasm for low code technology and making it possible for anyone to get started with Power Platform and Dynamics 365. Lisa has taken a career journey from being Dynamics 365 customer and business user doing unspeakable things with Excel to an evangelist for Microsoft Business Application, educating customers, helping solve problems for people just like who she used to be. Lisa loves getting people excited about the awesome technology, opening new possibility, and giving back to this community that has given her so much. Learning and sharing together every day. She's also a YouTuber, podcaster, blogger, and speaker. Welcome, Lisa Crosbie.
Thank you very much. Hello, Markus. Hello, Heidi. Thank you for having me on your podcast, which I have been listening to for quite some time.
How are you today, this very early morning for you?
It is, I feel like every time I do one of these, I have to explain that, I'm in Australia and it's ridiculous o'clock in Australia, but I'm actually an early bird, and so that's okay. It's always ridiculous o'clock in Australia when everyone else is awake. I am doing very well. I've had a lovely Easter break myself. I've had a week or so of being completely offline, switched everything off, deleted all the work and social apps from my phone, did me the world of good.
Oh,
Oh,
that's the way to vacation. I love it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Actually deleting the apps off your phone, that's that's
Mhm.
the way to do it.
yeah, perhaps sometimes when I go to vacation, I turn the notifications off, but deleting them, then it's an even bigger hurdle to get back
I've
into
I've
just
often
by.
got my notifications off, but that's next level.
Yeah. So, as an evangelist, what is it that you do?
So yeah, that is legitimately my job title, and it's a bit of a strange one. It's all about educating, inspiring, helping people understand what's possible with the platform. So you could categorize it into a technical marketing kind of role, technical sales and marketing kind of role. I work very closely with the sales team, but also with our customers here. So some days that is about creating technical content for the blogs and LinkedIn and things we do here at Barhead. Often it's more about doing things like ideation, envisioning, demos, workshops, hackathons, proof of concepts, all those just conversations that, it's not quite pre-sales. Sometimes it overlaps with pre-sales, but it's almost a little bit ahead of pre-sales in terms of, there's a customer where I'll say, if we've got someone who doesn't know what they don't know, then that sort of stage of doing things, it's almost like pre-sales. So it fits very much into that sort of like technical marketing kind of thing. It's different every day. I am learning heaps all the time. I have to keep up with a whole lot of stuff all the time, and I asked for all that. I love it.
It sounds like you're following the Catalyst program. Is that something that
Yeah. Sorry, Marcus. My audio is coming through okay. It's not showing up.
um we're hearing you okay?
You
I
sound
can see
great.
the
Okay.
waveform, so it's
Oh, you
probably
can see the
just
waveform. Okay, I
yeah.
can't see my own waveform. Sorry. Do you want to ask the catalyst question again? We'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, no problem. So it sounds a bit that you're using the Catalyst framework from Microsoft. Is that a thing for you?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. That's one part of it. Sometimes we will do a formal Catalyst engagement. Sometimes I'll take some of the concepts from that and use them in different ways. Very much about what's going to work for the customer, and what have I got up my sleeve that I can bring to that. So yep, absolutely, that's part of it.
Yeah. We're customers all the time. What's your last memorable customer experience as a customer?
So there's actually one that comes to mind that there's a shop here in Australia which is a women's clothing shop called Review, and they make sort of vintage style dresses, which I'm quite partial to. I'm in my denims here, but I quite like the sort of floral vintage dresses and stuff. And it's a chain store. It's not like an independent store. They're everywhere. But when you go into the shop, they greet you and ask for your name, and I'm always like, oh, really? I just want to, I just want to come in here and I just want to come in here and browse around and not be, like I don't really want to, but I sort of go, okay, yeah, my name's Lisa, whatever. And so I had a period where I was going in and I had to get, coming back out into the world again, having to buy some new clothes. and I must have gone in there a couple of times. But the first time I went in there, I was like, okay, they know my name, that's fine. I went in like a week later, and as I walked into the shop, the woman's like, "Hi, Lisa." It's like she actually remembered me by maybe I bought too much or made too much of an impression. But I was so impressed by that. And then now I'm making the effort to remember her name as well. But that thing of almost like going into the shop and it's a very personalized experience in an environment that shouldn't be, and I resisted it at first, and then actually when it came back around and she remembered my name, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then it's a very friendly store where people are often chatting to each other, and it just creates a nice vibe of you're having an enjoyable experience while you're in this place. So that's a lovely one, I think, that always that comes to mind.
That's such a nice story. When I was on the podcast as a guest, I did a negative customer experience. Everybody else was doing these great positive stories. But that's really nice.
I'll
It's
bring the positive.
amazing, right? It's amazing how much a difference that can make. Just that tiny personalization, remembering a nugget about somebody and bringing that up
Mhm.
the next time you interact.
I think it's a
Yeah.
pretty good skill for somebody who's working in a shop and clearly dealing with a lot of people to have remembered. So whether she's particularly good at that, or as I said, perhaps I just made myself memorable. I don't know.
Perhaps she uses a CRM system,
A really fast one then.
right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't see a Power App greeting app in her hand or anything. This is a genuine human relationship. She looked me in the eye and remembered my name.
So have you talked to Guru Faller about dresses then?
No.
So that's for next time you meet her then. So
Okay,
all right then.
excellent.
What is a custom page then?
Custom page. So custom pages are the ability to this is as part of the journey of bringing Power Apps together. So we're talking about bringing canvas-like things, and we'll come back to this, but being able to create within your model-driven app, and this also means within Dynamics 365, those customer engagement apps. So if you're using Dynamics Sales or Service or any of those things, you can do this, is to say, let's create a page which is completely pixel perfect design, exactly what you want on there. So at the moment, we've got, when you're building a model driven app, it's always been very modular design. You can have a list and you can have a form and you can put components on the form, and it's all those sort of modular components. But if you go, I want a line across here that's 5 pixels wide in this particular exact shade of blue, you haven't been able to do that unless you're bringing in PCF controls and code and things. So this is the no code, well, it's not no code, it's low code way of being able to design a page that has anything you want on it. And that means right down to the last pixel. It's not the same as a Canvas app, but it's a very similar concept to that, or connecting to other data sources and bringing those in. So this I get excited about this because it just opens up what that user interface can be in Dynamics and in model-driven apps. So you think about, now you can do things like, I could have a landing page where I put pretty buttons and my image and welcome Lisa and all those things on there, or I can bring in other data sources and have them there. I could have, 2 tables, 2 entities on a page interacting with each other in a way that you can't do with the standard form. And then there must be a million other use cases, which I'm very keen to hear from the community about the more that people start to get into this. But basically just cracks open the experience of building a model-driven app and what that user interface can do for low code rather than just PCF with high code.
Your enthusiasm is contagious. See why they
Didn't we say that at the start? I do get excited about stuff.
Yeah. So it sounds a bit like the thing that we've had for a while, embedding a Canvas app into a model-driven app. So what's the difference between that and this custom page then?
Yeah, it is a bit like that. This is like the next stage of the evolution of that. And they're not outright saying this replaces that, but if you read the documentation, there's like, you should be using this now. So this is the sort of the next direction. So the embedded Canvas app is still there, but it's much more limited. So what that is doing is when you did that, that experience was you had to sort of go in and create the page, and then you could have very limited what you could do. It's sort of in one section of the form, or it takes up one tab. You'd click through, and then it would pick up sort of an integration formula that you'd have to use, and then you'd come back, and it was a little like it was great, but a little bit clunky in that this is integrated better. If we want to kind of get right down to it, it's a smoother integration, and it's actually like a separate element in the solution, and we'll talk about solutions and so on. But you can actually have this as a whole standalone page. So firstly, your embedded Canvas app was only ever a piece on the page. So this allows you to make it as a standalone page, but you can also use it as, there's other options in there. You can have it sort of popping up as a center dialogue or a side dialogue, or then there's another part that's the new app side pane. So I don't know if you've seen in the sort of the direction of the user interface, where instead of it being just a section on the form, there's actually now a side pane that you can use for various things. And the idea there is you're clicking around on a view or whatever, and you've got a side pane that's almost like a pop-up down the side. So this is very much rolling with new things in the user interface and that direction of where the user interface is going, whereas the embedded form is sort of just is limited to a couple of things you could do. And having built having built across both of them, then you've got, it's much easier once you're in this. The formulas and power effects and stuff work more as you would expect.
Yeah, so the side pane, I always explain it as it's where we have had the quick create for a while, and it's sort of in the same place. It doesn't look like that, but it's oriented over there. So
yeah, you'll see it on the deal manager dashboard. There's a whole other topic that I can get excited about, but in Dynamics 365 Sales is a new deal manager dashboard, and that experience of the panel down the side, and you're interacting with stuff, you're clicking on things on the dashboard, and then the panel down the side becomes the place where you can edit the record that you've clicked on in a view. That's that same concept as well.
That's actually funny that you mentioned that, because that is exactly what I was thinking about as you were talking about this. I was wondering, is Deal Manager created like that?
And in fact, I will do a shout out at this point to Scott Duro, did a video on YouTube on custom pages, and he did one on custom pages. So what? It's a really, really good video, not on like how to make them, but why are they important? What's all this about? And he recreated that Deal Manager dashboard using the custom pages feature, and you can't tell the difference. But of course, he's just like, oh yeah, this is just a bit of this and a bit of that. And I'm like, this is mind blowing. This is not just anything. So yeah, if you're interested in this area, that's a must watch video as well that Scott did there. And yes, he showed how to basically that he could recreate that Deal Manager dashboard with a custom page. So that's the zone we're in here.
That's fantastic. We'll add a link to that to the podcast here.
Yeah, I'm just making a note of it so I can remember to grab the URL so everyone who's listening can find it easily in the show notes afterwards. So is it like the the Canvas app that we've created for a long time then, or is it something with the context, that difference between the Canvas app and the custom page then?
Yeah, it's very similar, but it's not exactly the same. And there's an important difference in here because if you are, if you're used to building Canvas apps, you're going to come across here and go, awesome. I know what I'm doing. I've got my menu, I've got my Power effects bar, and oh, wait, hang on, that component isn't there. But what about this? Oh, right. So the skills are the same. So, and this is where, those of us who I come more from a model driven app side of things. And I have been saying for a while, like this is the moment now where it all starts to come together, where Canvas app people need to learn about model driven apps and vice versa. But it's the same concept and the same skill set. You're writing the same types of formulas with Power Effects, and you're using components and so on that you would use when you're building a Canvas app, but it's actually technically a different object. It's not a Canvas app. So this is different from what we were saying before, where you're embedding a Canvas app into a model-driven app. That is actually a Canvas app. You're going, here's my model-driven app, create a Canvas app. It has a link and it's embedded. That's genuinely a Canvas app. This is a different technically different object that looks and feels and behaves very much like a Canvas app, but doesn't have all of the same. There are some components and things that aren't quite there, and it behaves differently. As I start to look at this, this all sort of became generally available late last year. There's more features being added and more bits and pieces being added. I'm not sure whether the plan is for it to be at parity or whether there will always be some differences. But at the moment, you will, if you know Canvas apps even a bit, it would take you about 5 minutes of playing around to go, hang on, wait, this isn't quite right. It's closer to the experience of when you build a Power App on Dataverse for Teams. If you've done that, again, that studio isn't quite the same. Like, it's technically a different object. So I think there are some limitations or whatever in there around that. But just, yeah, you'll notice that the skills are the same, the concept is the same, but it's not actually the same, and you will discover that fairly quickly once you start building with it, if you've got any experience with Canvas apps.
So if it takes a Canvas app builder 5 minutes to learn the new interface, how long will it take a model-driven app builder to learn the interface?
So I think like the experience of learning Canvas apps, and I've done a lot of teaching of Canvas apps, and I play around with them, and I can build basic Canvas apps, but it's not my day job. It's not something that I've seen some of the incredible stuff that people do, and it's like, I get it, but I don't do that. I think it's a bit like learning Excel formulas, right? So do you remember when you first learned Excel and you sort of go in and for some people with Excel, you're only ever going to get as far as, sort, filter, maybe concatenate, and then one day you discover that VLOOKUP is a thing and it changes your world. If you had that experience, you sort of, someone shares that and then you go, oh, wow, if I could do that, what else could I do? And so even as I'm building Canvas apps, it's very much, and all of my learning is very much a sort of, what do I need to know next? How do I find out that thing? Now I can do that thing. Oh, now what else can I do next? And the Canvas app stuff is the same. It's very, what do I need to be able to do? And then I'm going to search for, how do I do that thing? And then building a formula. And I've done a video on this on YouTube on how I put together the Canvas page. And at one point in there, I'm pulling out a formula that's quite long, that's around like search and filter and various things. And I explain how I've put that together. But I didn't kind of just wake up one day and start typing and know how to do that. Like, it's that thing of going, all right, well, I want to sort things in a certain order and I want to do it this way. And so I'm going to find an example of a search formula and a filter. And then, okay, what parameters do I need to match that? But there's a lot of built-in help now. Like, there's, compared to when I first started working this back in like 2017, where like, you're on your own, good luck with that. The community around it, and if you search for something on your search engine of choice, you will find someone who's done that before, right? It's really not hard to find examples of it. And if you pay attention as you start typing in the formula bar, you'll see that, like Excel, it gives you that, and if you understand how to read that, it gives you that suggestion. It's like, okay, this formula needs an open bracket and it needs this parameter and that parameter and then a closed bracket at the end. So, it's one of those things that I think, if when you start with a blank canvas, you start with a blank anything, it's a bit scary because where do I even start? So I think, for me, getting across the principles of there are components and the components have properties and the properties have formulas, core concepts, great. Now there's so many formulas that I can't just sit down in one go and learn them all. I'm going to learn them and I'm going to go, oh, I need a component today that's a gallery. Let me learn about what a gallery does. I want to sort it. Let me learn how to do a sort formula. So it's always like learning in the context of the thing I need to do and the thing I'm interested in. And then you just build the knowledge. So, I have great admiration for the people who are building things that are just mind-blowingly beautiful design, because that's not my skill set. But the stuff underneath is, I don't think it's any different from that process of learning Excel formulas or something like that. It's an iterative process and you learn what you need as you need it.
Yeah, and I think there's a thing where it's like you can write the formula in some sort of natural language, and it suggests what you're doing. So is that
Yeah.
into the custom pages as well, because it's the same studio?
Yeah, I didn't see it in there. That's called Power Apps Ideas, and that's very early days. And I
Yeah,
didn't see it in there. I wouldn't want to say definitively it's not there, but I don't think so. The Power Apps Ideas thing does a couple of things, and this one is exciting because this is going to be like 5 years from now, maybe 3 years from now. I don't know. That will be like, oh yeah, I totally just go in and write with natural like that development of low code into no code, that we can just write what we intend and it constructs the formula for you. That's popping up everywhere in the platform. It's coming up in the DAX formulas in Power BI. It's certainly in Power Apps, but right now it's pretty limited. You can do it with there's the ability to sort of type in something on I think it works on a gallery. There's something about the prose which is like by example. So if I want to have a date format in a certain way, I can put in a couple of examples and it will do the rest in that order. So it's very early days with that, and I didn't see that in the canvas. I didn't look for it, to be honest. I didn't see it in there, so I'm going to say I don't think that's there.
yeah.
But I think that's going to be that's an area to watch in that evolution, that next evolution from low code to no code, which is very new. But the who knows now with all of the AI stuff and
Yeah.
natural language stuff that's coming in, acquisition of nuance could affect it. I don't even know. There's a lot going on in that space that I think a couple of years from now that'll be big.
I just think it's exciting because
Mm.
filter and sort, it's so close to the formula that it's, yeah, I can definitely see them doing this.
Yeah, and that's absolutely, I mean, it's a stated direction to say, let's, the low code is awesome, but that barrier of I have to learn all these formulas and I just want to create a quick app and I'm a business user and I just need to get this done and I don't have time to learn that's still a real persona and a real problem. So that's the next evolution really is no code. I love watching all of this natural language stuff. My first degree actually is in linguistics, and I had an interest from a long time ago in all that sort of like computational natural language stuff, and to see where it is at now, reaching human parity with things. I find that area fascinating. There's not enough hours in the day, really, but that's that no code thing will be that's the next sort of direction. But in my brain, I feel like that's the next few years. That's where it's going. Yep.
Yeah. So what considerations do you have when you're building these custom pages then?
Yeah, so there's a few things to be aware of, and I will make sure we pop a link in to, there's some really good documentation on this of different components that are different from Canvas apps and things that don't work. First thing though is start in a solution. Like, this is best practice across all of these things, so we shouldn't need to say it, but it's worth saying, because of course I the kind of job that I do, I'm not doing proper I don't work on projects and do deployments. I'm doing a lot of like, someone needs to understand how this will work. Can we show them what's possible now, right? So I do a lot of fairly hacky scrappy stuff in order to show what's possible so someone else can can build it. So sometimes, I will confess, I will go in and not start with a solution because I'm just like, oh, what does this do? And I did that with this one the first time round. Is I just went in and went, oh, new custom page, awesome. Then when I want to come back and edit the thing later, I can't find it. It's gone. Where's it gone?
Oh,
Because it's not a Canvas app. It's not in the apps page. So if you create an embedded Canvas app,
yeah.
when you go into your navigation and you go into apps, you'll see it there because it is a Canvas app. A custom page, not a Canvas app, is not in the apps menu. So if you do what I did, don't do what I did, you can't find it. I do learn a lot by hacky scrapping around and pressing buttons and seeing what happens, because I can say firsthand. So what happens is, what you need to do is start a solution. And then from within the solution, you get new app, new, all those new options. New custom page is one of the options in there. That's the right way to do it. If you've been like me and jumped in a bit too quick and created your custom page without a solution, you then, after the fact, can get yourself out of it by creating a solution and adding an existing custom page into the solution, and then it's there, and then you can click through and edit it again. So just first thing to be aware of, start a solution, and if you didn't, go back and create a solution and add your custom page into the solution, because otherwise you'll be like, where's my custom page?
Yeah.
There is a whole kind of document, and I'm just having a look at it here on the side here, of which is called Known Issues with Custom Pages. So this is from the Microsoft documentation, and they're keeping this up to date all the time with things. So again, the thing to be aware of here is that this is very much a work in progress. Like, this is a relatively new feature. There's a lot going on with this app Convergence, bringing Power Apps and model driven apps together. And so there are some features that are generally available and some features that are in preview. So the whole concept of you can create a custom page for a model driven app is generally available. But then if you have a look at this, there are some specific or new capabilities that are still marked as preview. So just be aware that there's a feature set here of some things, at the time of recording. If you're listening to this a long time in the future, then, hopefully these things
Yeah.
are all available by now. But it goes through and sort of talks about some of the things that we've talked about here. So not all of the Canvas apps controls are available in there. So it gives you a list of what those are, talks about putting things in solutions. It doesn't have certain, API. I won't try and read through all of this, but there's a list of about 20 things that are like known issues. So it's worth just checking in on that page, because I can see that's been updated again, like maybe 2 weeks ago. So that's a constantly updated page that's giving you those things.
Yeah. So there's also a thing that it's very easy in a Canvas app or custom page to get fixed positions of everything. And the model-driven app there's no such thing. Everything just is responsive and reflows. So what do you have to do considering that?
Yeah, so then this is where we start to get into a concept around responsive design, and this is a Canvas app concept. And I will also do a bit of a shout out to Reza Durrani, who's done he's a Canvas apps guy doing a heap of stuff on YouTube as well, and he's done a bunch of videos on responsive apps. So I put myself in the position of a learner and learnt from some of his stuff, because this is an area even within the Canvas apps world that is not. It hasn't been around for a long time. Like, the ability to develop responsive apps in Canvas apps is relatively new. So when we're designing custom pages, you're absolutely right. It's sitting inside a model driven app, and your model driven app, one of the awesome things about a model driven app is it's just responsive. So you don't want to go whacking a non-responsive custom page component on top of your model driven app and ruining that experience. So then the formulas you want to use are all around responsive design of Canvas apps. And back to your earlier question, Heidi, about learning this stuff, if you are coming at this relatively new, start with the responsive design. Just don't even learn it the other way, because there are some things in there that are different. So just as an example, when you're creating a header, say on the top of the page, instead of going, I'm going to add a label and I'm going to drag it around the screen and put it here or set its width or whatever, you actually create what are called responsive containers. So you're starting off by putting containers in everything. So you have vertical containers, which allow you to sort of stack components in a this is good if you're watching this on video. I'm doing a a thing with my hand to indicate vertical here. If you're doing a horizontal thing, you can put things sideways next to each other, sideways on the page. So you can create these containers, and then you create containers within containers, and then everything you do in the formula is related to something else on the screen. So then the width of something becomes the formula. Instead of going the width is 600 pixels, the width is parent.width, which is the width of the parent container or the parent page or whatever it is. And then even within I did a Canvas app where I put two galleries side by side on the page. And so then within my horizontal container, I've got properties and options that I can say, yes, stretch this to take the full width, and then how many, I haven't got the right word for it, how many portions on the screen. That's the
Yeah.
wrong word, but you'll get what I mean. What's the proportion? Like I want this to be basically three portions, and the first one takes up one of the three and the second one takes up two of the three. So that's my relative width. And then as the thing scales up and down, it's going with that proportion rather than being an absolute fixed width. So that does change then, even with a header, where the background color goes, like it's part of the container rather than part of the label and things like that. So I had to do a little bit of unlearning and relearning to do the responsive bits. So if you're coming at this new to model-driven apps, I would suggest just dive right into that responsive design, and then the principles there around being able to, everything is relative to something else on the page, but then when you're done, you've got a much better experience.
When you're building these apps, then do you find that it's a lot of repetitive stuff that you keep doing over and over again? Do you use variables for that, or you just copy paste the things around in
Yeah,
these
so I
pages?
just jumped in and copied things around, but there are much better ways of doing that for sure. It's a bit of a theme here
All right.
with how I tend to work. So yeah, look, you can, these are designed to have, you can actually have multiple pages in your custom page, although the way that it's set up is they're suggesting that should be multiple custom pages. But if you had a settings page in there, around doing things with variables and various things like that, then that would be much more sensible for sure. Otherwise, there is a fair bit of copy paste and so on. So look, I think that comes down to how sophisticated it is what you're doing. Sometimes it's worth doing that. And I think if you're creating a full Canvas app, the concept of a full Canvas app has multiple screens and lots of movement and all of those things. And so you do want that sort of variables and settings and things so that you're not repeating those things, and you can just change a color somewhere and it changes all the way through because it's referring back to that. If it's a single page and it's genuinely a single page, you have to weigh up whether that's worth doing or whether it's
Yeah.
worth just doing on the page. Yeah.
Um, do you usually design it to match the model-driven apps in considering those theming?
Yeah.
So like the colors are the same, the I don't know, fonts are the same.
Oh, look, it depends what you're trying to do, but I think, if you want something that's something that looks like the rest of the user interface, then yes, absolutely, you'd want to do that. Other times you might want to go, well, here's a splash page, and I deliberately want it to look different because I want it to be a welcome to my app, and I want it to be really engaging and colorful, and it's got my branding and colors and things everywhere. It really depends on what your use case is as to how you want to do that. We've
Yeah,
lost Heidi again.
I think so.
Her video to me is always looking a bit fuzzy. I don't know if it looks okay for you, but even when she joined then, it was looking really blurry.
Yeah, but I've had that symptoms before, and always the recording is crisp clear because it's recording in
It's
the
from her side.
browser. So it's
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
I always consider that to just be internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was about to go to
There she
connections.
is. You're having troubles today,
Hey.
Heidi.
But I can still see a waveform now, so I think it's still recording you. So
You're going to have an editing job.
yes. And then no, no, it's not. All right.
We sort of get to the end of the topic
Yeah,
at least and then stop.
yeah. So when I've tried just dabble a bit in Canvas app before, I've had a bit of problems with how to work with connectors, and not that it's so many that I can choose like Twitter and things like that. It's more like, well, each and every user has to have their own connectors, even to Dataverse. So what are your considerations when presenting that to end users?
Mm. So we've got the same thing going on here where you can use this to connect to other data sources, and this is sort of one of the other big deal things about being able to bring custom pages in, because with a model driven app, to show another data source on the screen requires some type of virtual table or integration or something like that. So this allows no code way. And the example that I've played with was using a stream from Twitter, just because it's a real live data source and it's a good example to sort of, publicly available thing that we can show. So you can connect up to another data source in there. But yes, that does mean you've got the security and authentication and so on that goes with that, because of course you don't want people to have access to stuff they shouldn't have access to. So my experience of doing the maker side of it, you've absolutely got all the same connectors available. So that list of all the 500 connectors and so on that you can use with a Canvas app, you can bring those in. So this is a big sort of benefit, if you like, of being able to do this, is you can bring those things in. My experience of doing it as a maker was that when I published it, so back to the kind of putting it in a solution, what happens after you've made your custom page is that you go back into the brand new experience of the sitemap designer, and you can add your custom page into the model driven app. So that's the other thing you need to do, is you go create a new custom page, make the custom page, and then go and add it to your model driven app in the navigation, and you've got some settings and options and things there. And as you do that for the first time, it was checking my authentic, it was popping up that thing of, please sign in and authenticate what's going on here. I haven't tested with another pretend user coming in or even a real user coming in, but I'm assuming that the same thing would happen when the user comes in. They would have to authenticate somehow, because otherwise the security principles would be a problem. So I haven't tested that, but I'm assuming that that's how that would work. You said you're concerned about that, Marcus, or you don't, like, I think it's one of those things that comes up, people will ask, oh, can I bypass that? And it's like, eh, it's security, maybe not. It's sort of mildly painful for a starting point, but it is what it is, and once it's done, it's done. So I'm assuming the experience is the same.
Sometimes you might want them to see something that the service principal has access to, so it's exactly the same type of data for everyone. But
Yeah,
if it's like Twitter in the video that we will add to the show note, it's, well, then you will actually have to log into Twitter, and then people using that has to have
yeah,
Twitter to log into. So
yeah,
that's, but my consider is perhaps, well, if you're using a model driven app and all the users have a license, they're sort of in the app, and
yes.
then they're presented with this, oh, you have to sign in, and we're like, well, wasn't I signed in
Wasn't I already
already?
signed in? Yeah,
Yes, so it's more of that, well, this is weird, I don't really recognize this from this sort of only strict model driven side to this sort of blended
yeah.
situation.
I'm going to do a bit more playing around. Sorry, Heidi. Homework point for me.
So is there a situation where you don't want to go custom pages right now then?
I think you've got to understand them as, the options of how they can work. So we're thinking of it as largely a single page. You can have more than one, but don't try and build whole, like, you've got to separate that thinking of a canvas app, like the one time I'm talking about this convergence and these things merging together. But if you start with canvas app thinking, you're probably going to land in the wrong place. Like, it needs to be model driven app thinking. I'm here, what does this page functionally do? Whereas if you're trying to create a whole app right now, I think you might end up in a weird situation. So I just caution around your starting point for, this is actually bringing canvas capabilities into a model driven app. It's not about going, I'm going to build, your canvas app as your standalone thing doing something, and now I'm just going to plop it in there. So just, there's a different way of thinking in there. I think it's good for, like, it's popping up as a dialogue and side panes and things. But I think just back to that known issues list that I was talking about before, there are some things in there that are just not quite, certain kind of certain features in there and certain components and whatever in the Canvas app. I think you can work around most of those things, but I think it's really just about getting the right thought process of understanding that you're starting with that model driven app, and that's where you're coming from, and you're using these components rather than it being something where you're I'm building a Canvas app and just plonking it in there.
So you don't want to go all Tolkien and do like the Lord of the apps, and there's one app to rule them all. So
Well, this
don't
kind
do
of
that
is
then.
actually, this is one app to rule them all, right? Because this is now Canvas and model driven together, all together. But yeah, I think, there's always been different ways of thinking about these things, and I think this is, even though it's a Canvas app like thing, it's a model driven app way of thinking. And how is this benefiting my model driven app experience, and what am I bringing to that, rather than starting with the idea of, oh, this is a standalone thing and I'm gonna just kind of plonk it in there. I think you wouldn't do as well with that. But yeah, like the Lord of the Rings analogy, that's funny.
All right then. So we talked a little bit about this convergence between Canvas app, these custom pages, all those low code things, and then we have these model-driven apps. So w- if what's the convergence going towards then?
Yeah, so this has been something that's been on the roadmap for a couple of years, and this is really now the first sort of, wow, okay, this is real. So this is something that was talked about from as far back as like middle of 2019, was this concept of app convergence. So just as a terminology thing, this idea of saying, we've had these two very different things that are both called power apps for such a long time. And as someone who educates on this stuff, I'm always like, a Canvas app is start with a blank canvas, connect to any data source. Model driven apps start with a data model, and then why are these things both called power apps? And so this starts to to make sense now, because we're seeing this idea of but start with the model driven app. And it actually, I feel like this elevates model driven apps, to be honest. So those of us who are coming out of that dynamics world and model driven apps world, it feels like model driven apps have just become, it's not the other app anymore. I feel like maybe this is our moment to sort of say, here are model driven apps, and now we can bring that stuff into what we're doing with bringing those things in. So I think there's this idea of these two things don't exist in the future state of it as completely separate. Why are these both called power apps? These are app building things, and they come together in this way. And as we've seen, even in just what's been announced so far, there are things there already in preview and a lot of work going into this space. And I've watched this over the last 2 years, that they, from when it was first announced at the Business Application Summit in 2019. Oh, we're going to do this app convergence and they'll come together. And now it's like, I've got my hands on it and it's real. So this is a big long-term investment, and I expect that we're going to get even more benefit out of that investment. So that sort of roadmap around app convergence is another place that I've got my eye on very closely to see what else we get
Yeah.
next.
And I'm really happy for the model-driven apps, because that's been one of the big limitations. Well, you have to have the data in Dataverse.
Yes.
Well, now you sort of don't, but well, you bring them in by sort of attaching other stuff
Yeah,
that's
that's
not
exactly
really a
right.
model-driven app.
Yeah,
So
your
I
model-driven app
love
is
it.
still fundamentally on Dataverse, but now you don't have to think of it as only on Dataverse,
Yeah.
because you can bring in these other data sources with all of those things. So you could have, dare I say, a SharePoint list on a Canvas page in a model-driven app. Oh, what did I do
Yeah.
there? But you can bring in stuff like,
Yeah.
you start to think about some of those productivity things. You could bring in your to-do, or you could bring in something from Planner or whatever, as well as other, and playing around with Twitter, bringing those external things in. But you're absolutely right. It opens up the thinking about model-driven apps to more than just Dataverse plus integrations, because now we've got these other ways of bringing in those other data sources as well.
Yeah. So is there a date for general availability set for at
Yeah, so
least
there's,
some of
I
these?
mean, the whole thing is generally available, and then there
Oh,
are other bits in there that are not yet. So there's just like some specific or new capabilities are listed as preview. So those are in there, and then you have to sort of cross-reference back with the new release wave notes to find
all
the
right.
dates on them. So that's a whole piece of work in itself. But even just looking at it, like on the day that we're recording this, the whole thing is there, but there's an app designer overview, which is the sort of the new designer with the WYSIWYG thing of putting it together, is listed as preview. Yeah, there's quite a few things. Customize app commands is listed as preview. So there's a bunch of stuff in there that are bits and pieces that are still
Yeah.
coming in preview, and they will all each have their own dates. It's a bit like, I'm following the Teams and Dynamics things really closely as well. And when you go in and go, when are we getting Teams in Dynamics? And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, there's actually like 20 different features, and these ones are coming here and these ones are coming there. So this is the same concept. Overall, the concept is generally available, but within that there are a lot of sub features or components or whatever, and some of those are there and some of those aren't. So we'll pop the link to the sort of the header page in the show notes, and then you can see fairly clearly on the navigation menu of the Microsoft Docs, it says brackets preview next to
Yeah.
the headings. So all of those things are just, as I said, there's a lot of work going on in this. So I think one thing will come out of preview and something else will probably pop in there, because they want to make this is a big deal.
Yeah, and there are new things that coming out of private preview into
Yeah.
public preview, so a lot of things just happening.
Yeah, and I think
So
if you look at if you look at the release waves, when you start to look at that, the section in the Power Apps release wave is always the heading, and I don't have the words right in front of me, but the heading is always something like a modern app building experience or something. Like there's always that sort of top level heading, and so you'll find these things popping up in there as well. But if you look at that, those top level headings, like that's what they're working towards, is that sort of modern app building experience concept, where you've got all of these different things that you can use however you want.
yeah, I just have a slight problem with that term modern.
Modern.
Yeah. well, well, I know what they mean. It's just that when you try to explain that to like an end user customer that's have no history of the
Yeah.
past, it's very different. Well, what do you mean by that? It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah,
See, I wouldn't put that word in front of a
no,
customer trying to explain. I wouldn't say this is the new modern. There's always
yeah,
things within new release notes where you go, okay, that's talking to us, and
yeah,
then we sort of go, all right, what are the possibilities? Here's a thing you can do, and what are the possibilities for it? Yeah, I don't think I would ever put the phrase modern app designer in, because then we've got like this, the legacy or the classic.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
Don't.
I think that's
Let's try not.
terminology for us, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. So if we want to know more, we can go to your YouTube video and we will be sure to add that. We have Scattero's video about replicating the deal manager. We have links to the known issues. Are there anything else that you would like us to
So I
go
think
to?
let's include a link to Reza Durrani's YouTube channel on responsive design, because the videos that he's done there are really good around. He's doing Canvas app responsive design, but the principles of how to get your head, if you want like a longer form
Yeah,
tutorial on how to get your head around responsive design, he's done some really good stuff there as well, that is incredibly
yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, send it to me and we will
I
be
will.
sure to add it to the show notes.
Yep.
So, do you have any public speaking scheduled where we can see you next then?
Yeah, it's mostly YouTube public speaking at this point. I do pop up
Nice.
in various events and so on, but I haven't got back into a full agenda of in-person events quite here yet. So I've been doing a lot of work on YouTube and growing my tutorial content on model driven apps. I've reached a point with YouTube now where the number of subscribers and interactions and things has become quite a community in itself, and there are a bunch of requests and questions and things on there. So that's awesome, and I am doing a lot in that space. So yes, subscribe to my channel. There's going to
Oh,
be more
I
stuff coming on model driven apps. I'm dabbling in Teams. There is some Teams and presentation tutorials as well. Dynamics 365. I think I got a really good response to doing a Dynamics 365 sales tutorial and demo, because I think there's a lot out there that's much longer form than what I've done, and also perhaps a couple of years old, and it's changed a lot in the last couple of years. So I'm going to do some more stuff on dynamic sales on there as well.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about YouTube. All the things are like they have dates on it when it was published. Some of the blog posts are very difficult to find. Well, how old is this? Is
Yeah.
this relevant or not? If it's like Power Apps and it's 2 years old, well, no, then
Yeah,
it's not for
that's
us
exactly.
anymore.
And honestly, I think even Dynamics now, you think back 2 years old in Dynamics, we didn't
Yeah,
have any of those AI features the way they are now. That deal manager dashboard we are just talking about, even the user interface, there's a lot more white space in there. There's a bunch
yeah.
of different stuff going on in there. So yeah, I think that there's always a need to do to do new content to keep up with all of that stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, really nice. So I can see here that you have 7,820 subscribers
Amazing,
as
right?
of right now, and I'm so impressed. As I think Heidi mentioned in the beginning, we have two videos right now, and it's 11
11
subscribers. So
subscribers. We all start at zero. We all start at zero, no matter where we end up.
So I'm a bit curious then, as a podcaster and a dabbling in YouTube, how have you done this?
Yeah, so I started January 2021. I had 400 odd subscribers. So it's gone from 400 to nearly 8,000 in 15 months. I had the 400, which was a good starting point. I mean, I did start at zero, but I had done over the previous year in 2020, I had done a couple of videos. I did one on Power Apps licensing explained, which I had been very reluctant to do for a long time. I'd run app in a day training. My explanation of here's the 5 minutes of how to explain Power Apps licensing was something I'd done a million times. I'm like, I should just record this and put this on YouTube, but I didn't want to become like the go-to licensing expert. So I put it on and I switched off the comments because I was really scared of doing that. And then I did a tutorial on Power Virtual Agents in the middle of 2020 for a group. And the response I got to that was so good that I thought, oh, well, I've done the work. I might as well record it. So I did that one as well. And that video just took off. So that got me from kind of nothing to up to about 400. And then I sat down and went, what if I tried? Like, what if I actually, instead of just flinging out one thing, oh, because I've done this every now and again, what if I actually put a consistent effort in? And I certainly have not done one every week. In an ideal world, I would, but also I have a life, and I
Yeah.
don't want to be, like I'm not running a business on YouTube. Like I actually follow a lot of YouTubers who teach you how to do YouTube well, and I've learned a lot from them. But these are people who are like turning YouTube into their full-time living. I love my day job. I love doing this on the side, so I'm doing it to the extent that it serves me well, rather than trying to keep up with
Yeah.
trying to keep up with doing one a week. But I've started increasing the pace and variety of what I'm doing, and I'm getting better at doing it faster. So the first 5-minute video that I recorded took me 5 hours, because really I just had no idea what I was doing. So I think in terms of growing subscribers and stuff, honestly, you have to just keep adding content, and you have to add content before you're ready to do it. If you look at any YouTuber with any degree of success and you go back to their early work and I'll
Yeah.
include myself in this, it is not as good as their current work. And so you have to just put yourself out there and do it, and just add, the YouTube algorithm likes consistent content, good thumbnails, good titles, and it's a marathon. Like, it just doesn't, some people will blow up overnight, but this thing for me, getting from 400 to 1,000 subscribers was really slow, because I'd done, like, I had those 400, but I'd really done nothing. The algorithm wasn't, I wasn't active. So doing that sort of from that point to 1,000 probably took me 6 months. Like, it took me till about September to get that far. And then once I hit that 1,000, it seemed to just take off. But then even so, it's just a gradual build, 20 a day, 30 a day, whatever. And then suddenly it's 30 or 40 a day, and it grows. So it's been a pretty extraordinary experience, actually. I get a lot of comments and feedback and things on it that help me motivate me to keep going, because when people will watch something and comment, or find my email, or connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever, and say, this helped me for this reason, that's why we do this stuff, right? Like, the numbers are
Yeah.
lovely, but the person who reaches out and basically says, my life is changed because I learned this thing, and thank you for that. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. And I live by feedback as well. So for you to have this and have, I mean, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 views on your YouTube videos, getting comments and feedback based on that, it's just so lovely. So
Yeah,
very well done, and
thank you. Yeah,
congratulations to
it kind of
all of the
becomes
hard work.
motivating to keep going when you get that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so yes, thank you.
Yeah. Who would you recommend as a future guest on this podcast then?
Well, have you had my fellow podcaster Megan Walker? Have you had her on the show?
It's been a while since we had Megan V. Walker on, so we can probably have her
Good
on
job to
again.
her.
She's
Um,
lovely to talk to.
We've also got a brand new MVP in Australia here, Roshona Elijah, who's just been awarded. She's very big in some of the Power Automate and Power Virtual Agent stuff, and doing some interesting things with stuff in Power BI in there as well. So if you want to get someone new into the mix, she's an enthusiastic person who's just come into the program as well. So
She's
maybe
been
reach out
very
to her.
long on YouTube as well, and she had that "What the Flow"
Yeah.
that
Oh
I
no, that's
just.
Eliza. That's Eliza. Get Eliza as well. So that's Eliza
Oh,
Benitez, who does the What the Flow. Roshona
sorry.
is brand new, not on YouTube. She's got a blog, actually. Roshona's done a lot of stuff with blogging, and educating people around chatbots and things. But yeah, if you haven't had Eliza, give Eliza a call too, for sure.
Yeah, let's add them both. So, and sorry that I mixed the names up.
That's all right.
Yeah,
It's very hard to keep up with everyone in the world, Marcus, isn't
yeah.
it?
And then, of course, we have your homepage, lisacrosbie.com, your YouTube, youtube.com/Lisa Crosbie, LinkedIn, your Lisa-Crosbie. You have managed to get a really good Twitter handle as well,
Got
at
my
Lisa
name.
Crosbie.
Yep.
The Odd Podcast together with Megan Walker. Anything else then?
That's pretty much me. Feel free to connect with me. I do, as I said, I do love hearing from people. I do love hearing from people around things like, what else do you want to learn? What are the things, I always have to try to get myself back into that beginner mindset. What do people want to learn? So I'm always happy to hear from people who go, can you do a tutorial on this? I can't guarantee that I'll turn that around quickly because of the aforementioned, job and life and so on
Uh,
going on here as well. But I actually do really enjoy hearing from people who are, who've watched stuff and enjoyed it or got something out of it, or who have requests for things. So yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, and let me know if you're listening to this and you send me a message on LinkedIn, say you heard me here. It's always good to know kind of where people have connected. Twitter, I haven't done a lot, but I reckon I'm starting to get a decent sort of traction there with a bit of a rhythm of Twitter, so I'll probably do a bit more there. I'm fairly active there as well. I post Wordle every day on Twitter as well as Power Platform stuff.
I haven't started Wordle, and I'm trying not to, but
Yeah, perhaps don't.
it seems very contagious.
It is. It
So
is definitely addictive and contagious. I just clocked over like 100, my 100-day streak. So I was very
all right.
nervous on that 100 days.
And usually I hand over to Heidi now to ask how everyone can reach it. But since we've lost Heidi during the
Lost Heidi.
recording here, I'll just say that you who are listening, that you can find us on, let's see here then, we have a Twitter hashtag Serum Rocks, we have a LinkedIn page, a Facebook page, and then of course our brand new YouTube video, and of course serumrocks.com. And thank you, Lisa Crosbie, for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me, Markus, and Heidi as well. Thank you.
See you next time on
Bye.
Serum Rocks.